Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Doha Heat podcast. I'll be your host for today. I know that you are a bit confused. We'll explain all of this to you just now. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I am half Portuguese, half South African. I've been in Qatar for a number of years. I work in the marketing field. I've worked with a number of companies in different industries. And today I'm here to find out about Doha Heat podcast.
You forgot to tell your name.
So,
Yeah. No. So she's Zarina Rajah. And I'm in the hot seat today. So I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. But okay. Zarina and we actually met online on Instagram, which is how I make most of my friends these days. And then we just connected, actually. I really love her feed. She is Sohail on Instagram. Really beautiful feed, really meaningful content. And so we just started talking and then we met, and then I invited her on the podcast, and she was like, no, you know what? How about we interview you instead? And I was really confused, like, why? But then she explained that, she really wants to get the message out about, like, why Doha Heat, why the podcast, a little bit about the host, which is me. So that's why we brought her on. So, yeah.
So today, firstly, I want to find out about you, Ifath.
Okay.
Ifath the person, not the interviewer. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in Qatar?
Okay. So, I was born in India. I left India when I was 4, went to Dubai with my parents. My brother was born before I went to Dubai. And then, so ever since I was young, I've been taking care of him, sort of like his second mom. And I was really young when I was doing that myself. So I have a really strong connection with my brother. If in my family, everyone knows that I love him more than everyone else, even my mom. So I spent most of my primary to middle school in Dubai. It was a really, really nice place. I was really upset that I had to move with my family to Qatar. I was really sad. I thought that my life is over.
How old were you then?
11. But it wasn't over. And I came to Qatar and I fell in love with this place. It gave, there's a sense of community here that I don't find anywhere else. I think it's also I experienced way more multicultural, and I know that the Gulf states are known for their multicultural atmosphere, but in Qatar, I don't know, I just felt more connected to people here. I went to high school here, and then I went to university here. I've made most of my friendships, most of my really solid friendships in life here. So for me, this is home, and I think it'll always be home. Yeah, that's been my journey.
So you went to a university here?
Yeah.
Which university?
I went to Northwestern University. I studied journalism there.
Okay. And what was your first job after
Actually,
college?
this is my first job after college. While I was in university, I did a lot of part-time jobs, a lot of internships, but a proper job, it's Ginger Camel. I've been working here since.
What about the journalism part of it?
For journalism, while I was in university, and I also still do some sort of projects on the side by myself, because my job currently is marketing. So while I was in university, I traveled to DC, United States, at Washington, DC. And I interned over there with the Pulitzer Center. So I did a lot of, I did the back end of journalism over there, and then I reported on stories while I was there. So I reported on the slavery history and how the burial grounds or the cemeteries of slaves are very different from the ones of normal white American residents at the time. And I kind of explored why that was the case, why were the slave burial grounds not treated properly, already they've gone through so much while they were alive, and even in death they have no respect. We don't know their names, we don't know their identities, they're still considered numbers, which was something that really bothered me. So kind of obsessively went around cemeteries, which I'm sure my mom was not happy about. But and then I just explored, took pictures, interviewed so many people, and I created a story around that, which got a lot of attention, and a lot of like local communities in Washington D.C. and Virginia, like in the states around it, started looking at their own cemeteries to see if they could do something to maybe rebuild them, or like, you know, just find out the history behind them. So
That's wonderful.
yeah.
And if you were not doing this, what else would you be doing? What would you be your next career choice if you were not with journalism or with marketing?
With marketing. I think I would be an actor. I mean, actually, in my last year in university, and while I was in middle school, I did a few shows, acting shows, not something really like famous or whatever, but while I was in university is when I actually learned a little bit about acting. We created two shows in my university with students, but my professor, she's very famous as a director, a theater director in the US. Like, she's taught like really famous people, and then she moved here. So we studied under her, and then it really brought like this whole different outlook to life for me, because I felt like I was always a confident person, but I built this new sense of like confidence that I didn't have, that I could do anything, I could be anyone, and I could be confident in that. And for me, that was a big deal, because she would make us do crazy things, like act like we're animals, or act like we're objects, and run around class, and it was very exhausting. Like, we would spend hours and hours in university, weekends in university, just acting. And what was different about this class was it's not like we were enacting Shakespeare or enacting another, you know, playwright. We actually wrote our own play. So we actually wrote about things that mattered to us. So a lot of the things that mattered to me were to do with identity, feminism, my Indian identity mixed with me living here, and I am very passionate about issues revolving around women and sexual harassment and all of that. So I really addressed that, and it took a huge toll to actually just get that off my chest, like really address issues around sexual harassment in India, and so I think I had like a 5-minute monologue where I was very upset during the show, and I was screaming or yelling at someone and just releasing my frustration. And for me, just to present that to like, I don't know, 100 people who came for the show was a big deal, because I actually talked about what mattered to me, and in a way that like people accepted me for it, and that was, you know. So ever since then, I was like, if I have an opportunity, like I will definitely pursue maybe more around this. I don't want to like acting in terms of plays, that's like live shows, or what like really inspired me, because I love watching them as well.
So going back to how passionate you are about the cause for against women violence and sexual harassment and so on, where would you suggest that women can go and join these institutions, if there is any, to create more awareness about this?
Personally, like in while I was living in Qatar, I did not find. I mean, I found a few places that do talk about this, but not very like, not very I don't know, active, I guess. So what I usually do is I literally just talk about it. I write about it. As a journalist, I write about it. When I travel, I explore issues around this. So, I mean, I think when it comes to issues like these, it's what's most important is to educate yourself first. Because yes, you can be passionate about something, but without having like the intellectual capability to like carry that passion forward. So for me right now, I still think that I don't know everything I can about feminism. I don't think I will ever know. So for me, it's more important to learn about like the intersectional identities and how that affects like feminism, how that affects women day to day, and that's what I do, and try to raise these issues wherever I can. So recently I was invited to this forum about feminism and gender equality, gender roles, where I spoke as a panelist. So those are things that I involve myself in. As much as I can talk about like the things that I already know, I talk about them, and on the side I actually educate myself about them.
Going back to the podcast, do you find that is it somewhat fulfilling from coming from a journalist
Yeah.
background? Do you find that you can use that and bring out your journalism aspirations
Yeah, my passion.
here?
Yeah, I definitely think that this really like ignites my passion, and I really enjoy doing this. And I really like appreciate the fact that my boss he realized that there is this part of me that really loves journalism, and he gave me this opportunity to be able to host this podcast. And I think for me, like the reason I joined journalism was because I enjoy being in other people's shoes. I just really enjoy their stories. I enjoy asking people. I enjoy imagining what life would be like to be them. And even if they're not talking about like the most emotional things in the world, just because I feel like when you get people to start talking, they're always interesting. There is not a single person in this world that won't be interesting. So for me, when I initially started, it used to really I don't know, rile me up whenever I did interviews with people, just to listen to them talk whatever they were talking about, whether it be fashion or engineering or things that were not even remotely interested me. You could still relate on a human level with them. So, and especially on this podcast, I've tried to like raise topics like mental health, feminism, again, topics about childcare, health, fitness. So all of these topics that every person every day faces. So I think this podcast is important because it is catering to the community and talking about issues that the community thinks about.
When you first joined Doha Heat, did your parents understand what it is that you were going to do? Were they supportive?
So I got involved with Doha Heat like 5 years ago while I was in university. It was my first year in university. And I started just inviting guests for it, actually, just trying to create content for it, trying to find interesting people to be interviewed. And so at that time, my parents didn't even know what a podcast is because it wasn't well known in this region at all. And I think it's just recently started to gain a lot of awareness. It's really shot off in like US or UK or the Western region more so than in the Middle East so far. But recently I've seen a lot of people being very interested in the concept of podcasts. So when I started doing it like full-time, hosting it from last year is when my parents really got to know like, oh, she's interviewing all of these people, and they've been extremely supportive. My mom even came on the show for Mother's Day. So yeah.
Is there any other passion or something that nobody else knows about that you enjoy? One of your favorite things to do? I know that you love books.
Yes. Yes.
But apart from the books?
Apart from books, I spend most of my time reading. When I'm not reading, I'm writing. I don't ever share my writing, like my personal writing.
Why?
I don't know. I think I still need to get to that point where I'm confident with sharing that. And I think it'll happen eventually. But right now I'm okay with writing about other people. That's like journalism is like my comfort zone now, because I can write about other people. I don't have to like emotionally involve my personality in that story, so and accurately represent them. But when it comes to writing about myself, like poetry or just fiction or anything that bothers me, I don't really share that because I don't feel super confident doing that yet. What do I do apart from that? I'm very passionate about skincare. I feel like everybody knows this, but
yes.
Again, and health and fitness. I think self-care is very, very, very important for people. And as a woman, I think in this society, like most people are raised to be sort of like, we have to achieve everything perfectly. And in that rush to achieve all of these 5,000 things that we're supposed to be doing, we really don't take care of ourselves. And I think just to quieten your mind, just to sit and maybe journal sometimes when something's bothering you or when something's not bothering you, or to color or to take care of your skin, to take care of your body is very important. and that's something I really focus on. I really focus on self-care, not for myself, not just for myself, but even for other people, you know. So that's my passion, I guess.
And going back to Doha Heat, can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit how it started, why, and how far are you in your kind of timeline, if there is such a thing?
Yeah.
Where would you go from here?
Okay, so Doha Heat started 5 years ago, and I was not involved in the beginning stages of it, but I mean, I've had this conversation several times. And basically, it was started because my boss, Stefan, and the person he started it with, which was John Savage, they thought that the perception of Qatar was not very positive globally, not just Qatar, but the region actually, because people thought that expats specifically come here just to make money, just to make as much money as they can, and they leave, and they're not actually contributing significantly to the community here, and it's not meaningful. Like, life here is just about making as much money as you can, or you know, that kind of lifestyle. So they were really bothered by it because they saw that there were so many people who were contributing very significantly to the community here, from a lot of viewpoints. They either individual initiatives, or companies were taking initiative, or there were really interesting people that were living here that nobody knew about. So they started it as a way, like a community podcast, to create the sense of community within this region. So people who live here know about other people around them who are doing amazing things and are inspired to do them as well. And people outside who either want to move in or have moved out or are thinking about the region and they don't know how to sort of, you know, they don't know where to put this. And they realize that, no, this is a very meaningful place to build your life in as well. So that's why they started it. And ever since, I think, initially the first few years, like, it was difficult to, I guess, gain momentum because podcast was not a big thing here.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, Stefan has told me that he felt like he was speaking to, like, thin air or the walls, that nobody was listening to him. And eventually, like, I think after I joined, we tried to, like when I joined last year, we tried to sort of get the community feedback on what we're doing. And we've gotten very good feedback. People are always, when we go out in public, when we go out for events, people are always like, oh, I heard that episode, I heard this episode. They give us their feedback. They say, maybe you should have asked that question. That person was not very, like, open about speaking about this thing. So they're very meaningfully listening to this. Even on social media, we get a lot of excitement for certain guests. We get a lot of excitement for things that we're talking about that nobody's heard of before. So I think we're kind of raising awareness about the people that live here, and it's really gaining momentum. And I think within the next 1 or 2 years, like, podcasts should become a big thing, inshallah, in Qatar as well.
If you were to bring in somebody that you'd really, really want to bring, the one person, who would that be?
I really want to bring in Sheikha Moza, honestly. I really want to bring her in, because if you think about someone who's really built the community, it's her. She has created educational opportunities like nobody else. She's risen awareness about talking about being a journalist. She's raised awareness about the culture with the museums here. She's really built a sense of, like, solidarity amongst expats and locals for the country. And I really think that she's one of the most inspiring women I've seen, because not many countries, especially in the Middle East, most countries get flack for not giving women the ability to, like, make really substantial decisions, but she is making substantial decisions every single day. So I would really love to have her here, because obviously I love women, and also because I want to ask her, you know, like, about her challenges and how did she take all of those challenges and all of that negative, you know, feedback, and how did she turn that into so much positivity for the country?
Okay. Where would you go? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
As Doha Heat?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the next 5 years, I think Doha Heat will because it's the first podcast in the country, so it has that sort of, like, edge already, right? And I think because there are so many interesting people already in Qatar, like I don't see there's ever going to be a shortage of content for us. And I really think that because we create like deep, meaningful content, that people, so it's not just like a social media post about, hey, this initiative is great, maybe you should participate in it. It's just asking that person, why did you think of starting that? It's asking that person, what is the meaning behind doing something like this? Asking them like, how can other people be part of this thing? How can other people start their own things?
That was my next question.
Yeah. So that's very meaningful, and I think when you create meaningful content, there's no way it's gonna go down. It's only gonna go forward. So,
what would be your advice to the younger you?
The younger me.
In terms of if there was somebody younger than you at university and looks at Doha Heat as a concept, what would your advice be if they want to start up their own podcast?
I think honestly this region needs podcasts. We need a lot of podcasts. So this is one topic. We're trying as a company also to start different topics like sports, the business podcast that we already have, a few others. But I think everybody has very unique ideas, and some people, like, they have their own kinds of passion. That they're like, for me, if I had to start another podcast or another 2-3 podcasts, I would start one for sure on books, one for sure on skincare, because I know that I know this. And I know there are lots of people who have a lot of different passions, be it like art or music or history or education, whatever it is, they can start a podcast of their own, and they can grow along with it. Like, it really grows, you really grow with it. You learn so much. It's like a very accelerated process of learning, because you meet so many interesting people every single time, and it's just really, so you learn a lot within a very short time frame. So, and I know that a lot of people don't start this because they think, oh my God, it's such a commitment, or oh my God, it's so, I'm not confident enough for something like this. But for like when Stefan actually mentioned it to me first, like, you should host, I was like, there is no way I'm gonna do this. And he was like, why? And I was like, no, I can't. I don't want to be in front of the camera. I don't want my voice to be out there because, I am, you always think, oh, I'm gonna make mistakes. And you know this because right before we came here, you were so nervous as well. So it's just this feeling of like, you can overcome it, and it happens, but until you actually face it, you can't overcome it. So just step outside your comfort zone and do things that you wouldn't do. And honestly, like, if it's horrible, it's horrible, but you learn something. If it's great, then you reach a point where everybody else acknowledges that it's great.
What do you like most about the podcast? The whole concept of podcast.
Of the whole concept of a podcast. Okay. I love Doha Heat, but I also love other podcasts a lot. My favorite podcasts are like true crime podcasts, and news investigative journalism podcasts specifically, because and the reason I think podcasts are great is because, for example, when you're reading, you have to be like 100% focused. You can't be doing so many other things at the same time. When you're watching a movie, or when you're watching a TV show, or when you're watching a documentary, whatever you're trying to learn, you really have to invest that time in it. But with podcasts, you really don't. Like, you can do it while you're doing so many other things. You can do it while you're in the gym. You can do it while you're doing grocery shopping. You can do it while you're driving. And you have podcasts that will cater to every topic out there. So this one time I was like, I don't have enough time to watch YouTube videos on skincare, but I still want to keep learning. So I just downloaded a skincare podcast, and now I listen to it all the time, and I'm updated with whatever's happening. I'm increasing my knowledge, and I'm not spending a single extra minute on that, which I think is very good. And especially with the concept of podcasts, because they're long, they're not like a short, like nowadays people I think have like very short attention spans.
Yes.
So they want to like have like a quick whatever, but I think that's taking away from you as well. Like, yes, an Instagram post or an Instagram story will give you a very quick tidbit on it, but how long are you going to remember that for? For like not even a second. You're going to move on from it, Even people who produce content, you're going to move on. You're going to forget what you produced like a year ago, So I think in that sense, something that saves time but is also long and meaningful and really gives you like a deeper insight into topics as podcasts, because they can run from like 5 minutes to 30 minutes to hours, and that's fine because you can just divide your time based off of that, and you still get so much knowledge that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't listen to it.
With the whole the way things work on social media, and like you said, everyone seems to have a very short attention span.
Yeah.
How would you suggest that people like yourself would enter into the education system, for example, to teach people to have conversations, and it's okay to go on for another hour or half hour, but get to know instead of just having a picture or a 5-minute.
Yeah.
How would you encourage that at schools?
At schools.
So you start
Yeah.
off with another generation
Yeah.
that is pro podcast.
That's a very good question. I think honestly, it's very difficult these days to be honest. I don't know how parents handle this, because I see younger kids know way more than I know about anything when it comes to devices and technology, and it's really difficult to stop them from doing something like that. But I think currently there are lots of interesting initiatives, thankfully, that are coming up. Like I know this one initiative that one of my friends started, that she was creating. It's called Boroi Box. I don't know if it's still running, but she was creating games for young children who could, which were like very learning, sort of educational based games, and they could also, like, it was a combination of like physical games with technology. So how can you make it educational whilst using technology? So children get best of both worlds, because you cannot stop them from using technology,
no,
right?
You can't.
So I think in schools,
would you encourage schools to have their own podcast?
Yes, definitely. So and give children the opportunity to produce them.
Yes.
For sure, because my mom, she started that, and my mom is an assistant principal. She started that in her school, where she invites the students to come and speak about, issues, topics, whatever updates there are in the school, and they speak, and that's how they raise their confidence. That's how they're introduced to the concept of podcast, and they get to learn more about it. But I genuinely think, like, for me, I started reading when I was 2 or 3, honestly. And I mean, that sounds weird, but actually my mom started reading books to me, those picture books with some words, and then there are pictures of a house or a tree, and you read. That's how I started reading. I was reading like The Alchemist when I was like 9 or 10. So I think if children are given books to read when they're really young, they will naturally grow up to wanting deeper meaning through other things. And they won't want like a quick, just a stimulation.
Yes.
And I think reading is never going to be dead. So if your child requires sort of like entertainment, you can give them books that will entertain them. Like, books were so entertaining to me. There are lots of amazing children's books with amazing, like, fantasy. Like, you can just get into books with like a topic that you care about, and then eventually you'll grow up to wanting to, I don't know. So I think reading really matters, and I don't know how schools are doing that these days, but I hope they're really encouraging library. And
well, I hope you do start a tour, a school tour, and encourage schools to have their own podcast. And that would also create the whole opening dialogue, conversations, getting to know, and discovering themselves.
That's a very good idea, actually. Yes. We'll actually take that into account.
Well, I think that's it from me today. We're reaching the end of our podcast, and I'll be back for sure.
Yeah, so Inshallah. You should promise us that you're going to come back and speak about yourself next time, because she's awesome. Like, I think when we started talking, like, we can't stop talking, because we have to sit for hours. So I don't know if you guys want to hear that, but we can try and cut it short. But you have to promise that you'll come back.
No, Inshallah. We'll do. I'd love to come and speak about women empowerment. Definitely, that would be one of my topics that I'd like to discuss.
Awesome. Okay, that's I like that.
Thank you so much for watching.
Yes, thank you guys
for listening.
And watching.
Yes.
Take care.
Okay.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.